I define transiency as when a student is moving from school to school, maybe 2, 3, or 4 times within a given year.
So transiency means that families are in short-term living situations. So students and families are moving from place to place on a regular basis. Research shows that the greatest factor leading to juvenile delinquency is transiency. So high school dropouts, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, all of those kinds of things become factors due to transiency. So at our school, specifically at McKinley, the transiency rate is 57%, meaning that 43% of our students stay for the duration of the entire school year.
Transience is very big. When I first started in the Allentown School District, one school had a 70% transient rate. So 7 out of every 10 students was different than at the end of the year than the beginning. How is a teacher supposed to be able to teach and hold things together?
Our principal had actually done a study to research, what is the difference in our students who stay and our students who don't. And our students who stayed markedly outperformed those who didn't. And so that factor is huge because our students don't get the same education. When you move to a new school, there are so many social factors involved. Finding new friends, getting to know your teacher, what are the rules, what are the expectations, who can I go to? When I need something, what about my guidance counselor? Maybe I need to talk to them. So there's a lot of stuff going on in their heads that they can't necessarily focus on the educational piece. And once you have your emotional groundwork laid, then you can start to learn. But if that's not set for you, you can't. It's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When you think about Maslow's hierarchy, your basic needs have to be met first before you can do any higher level thinking.
I found that the main issue that really contributed to transiency was economics. Simply put, they would be evicted out of their home and they would have to move to another location or sometimes even another city. If they were homeless, they could only be in the homeless shelter for a certain amount of time. So that would probably be the primary element. Another factor that might affect their transiency too would be, for example, a family breakup. A bitter divorces often would affect our kids, and then that would then also usually then end up being combined with poverty as well. And in some cases, we also had situations where students would reach a certain age and their parents would basically move them, force them out of the house and wanted them to be able to survive on their own, which would force that student into a transient situation.
At the elementary level, what we're seeing is students sometimes become withdrawn. Sometimes they give up. We have 10-year-olds who just give up on themselves and have decided that it doesn't matter because they don't have stability in their home. It's what they've seen for so long that they just expect that they're going to fail. It's kind of funny because I talk to them on a regular basis, and in the hallways they'll be like, "Hey, Miss Schwartz, just so you know, we're moving to Boston, we're moving to Chicago, I'm moving down the block, moving to another school." And so it's really become commonplace that our students have become really resilient, which is a great thing, that they're able to adjust so quickly, but that's not to say that it doesn't have an impact.
First and foremost, it affects the student in how they become a part of that school. If they don't feel part of that school, it's very hard for them to want to make a connection with a teacher or other students. And I'm going to tell a little story here. There was this wonderful woman, her name was Fern Mann, who was a president of our union, and she was going into one of our elementary schools. School was already in session. And when she went into was about to go into the school, she noticed there was a little boy sitting on the steps at the school. So she went and sat down next to him and asked him, why aren't you in school? And he said, "Oh, I can't go today." And she said, "But everybody else is in school. I don't understand why you can't go." He said, "Well, I can't go because my teacher's not there today." And she said, "But there'll be a substitute there." And he said, "But she won't know my name." And I think that's probably the greatest thing that affects a transient child is nobody knows their name, and they've become so accustomed to being that fringe student within that setting that they'll come into the classroom, they don't feel they're going to be there that long, so they don't even bother to get to know another person in the room. And also sometimes some teachers may not feel to take the time to them, but they, of anybody, really need to be able to feel a part of that classroom. They have to be drawn in because they have to have a sense of belonging.
This is called Tragedy's Bait. This was about, I guess the crux of this is many of the students do not want any knowledge that, they don't want people to have knowledge that they are experiencing homelessness. So this was about a young lady that was experiencing homelessness, and she came down to the office at a school and asked to see me. And the principal came out and said, hey, somebody wants to see you. It's that Mary Catherine what's her name. It's Mary Catherine what's her name, who has the words but can't explain where she went to sleep last night. She freezes like a deer caught in the light. Mary gets an A on almost every test. She seems to always try her very best. But she gets real edgy whenever you mention home. Her feet shift slightly and her blue eyes start to roam. The phone at her home is disconnected. Can't call children and youth. Mary Catherine isn't neglected. She waits patiently in the line for lunch. Yet something is wrong, I have a hunch. But what about Rachel? What about Jim? There's something going on with her, and definitely with him. And how about the girl who stands alone at recess time, or the boy at the nurse's office, who is quiet like a mime? It seems so unfair that we seldom can tell which children live in their own private hell, and it seems unfair we can do nothing but wait as children dangle little pieces of tragedy's bait.
I do this thing where I sit outside the classroom every day, every class period, and I shake each student's hand when they come into the room. And I started doing this in middle school. I started doing it because as a teacher, I would go around the room and I would try and talk to every student, or at least at every table that the students were working. And I remember this one day, I got to this one table and I looked at this one young lady and I asked her how she was doing. And the first thing she said to me was, "You were the first person who spoke to me today." Now this is later in the day, which means that she went through an entire school day without anybody acknowledging her existence. That's huge, and especially in a middle school level, that's huge.
I mean, you would hope that the whole education system was all in on this child, because we can't afford disposable children, we can't afford disposable adults. We should be all in, but some of these parameters that get issued from further up the line, I'll say, it creates a battle zone, and sometimes you got to be fighting a battle.
You know, our families are moving. We know that, and there are factors that we as educators do not have any power over. So what if we at least can make an awareness among our community that, hey, this is an issue. We don't want our students to leave. We love them and want to keep them, and we want them to succeed. So if you need to move, well, here's our catchment area. This is where our boundaries are, and this is where you need to stay within in order to stay with us. Let's find you some housing that makes sense for you, that's affordable, that can accommodate your family and your family's needs.
But the bottom line to all of this is we have to, the teachers have to, more importantly, the children have to believe that they're worth it.
I think that's the solution to so much, is that connection. A person-to-person connection not only can be a solution to transiency, but it can be a solution to self-esteem and self-worth issues, and even cultural, religious, and race issues as well. That's where it all starts, with a one-on-one connection. And I think that probably is the most valuable impact any person can make, is to have that connection with another person.